When Lucas Hayes, a 32-year-old single dad, arrives to fix a leaking pipe for his billionaire neighbor Victoria Kane, he never expects that a split-second decision during an impending flood will lead to the most awkward encounter of his life. From embarrassment to tension to unexpected chance meetings filled with surprises. This story will take you on a strange journey as two completely different worlds collide. Follow along to the end, hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The wrench slipped from Lucas Hayes' hand and clattered against the porcelain sink. He cursed under his breath, fishing it out of the cabinet while water dripped steadily onto the back of his neck. Cold, persistent, the kind of annoyance that made a Tuesday feel longer than it had any right to be. "Everything okay down there?" Victoria's voice drifted from somewhere above him, polite but edged with something he couldn't quite place. Impatience, maybe. Or just the way rich people talked when things weren't going according to plan. "Yeah," Lucas called back, his voice muffled by the cabinet. "Just give me a minute." He shouldn't have taken this job. Should have known better than to show up at a house like this with his truck making that grinding noise and his daughter's soccer practice starting in 2 hours. But Victoria Kane had called him directly, not through the usual channels, not through the property management company that handled most of the expensive homes on Ridgeline Drive. She'd called his cell, the number he'd given her 3 months ago when he'd fixed her back porch railing. "I remembered you said you did plumbing too," she'd said, her voice smooth and even over the phone. "Would you have time today? I know it's last minute." Last minute. That was one way to describe a call that came in at 7 in the morning, right as Lucas was burning toast and trying to convince Mia that yes, she did have to wear shoes to school, even if none of the other kids cared. But Victoria Kane wasn't like other clients. She paid on time. Actually, she paid early, with a tip that made Lucas double-check the deposit slip. She didn't hover or second-guess his work. And she lived alone in that massive house, which seemed wrong somehow. A place that big should have had noise in it, kids running around, voices carrying through hallways. Instead, it just had Victoria, moving through rooms like a ghost who happened to own the building. Lucas repositioned himself under the sink, squinting at the pipe joint that had been weeping water for who knows how long. The wood underneath was soft, rotted through in places. This wasn't a quick fix. This was a problem that had been ignored until it couldn't be anymore. "How bad is it?" He jerked, nearly hitting his head on the cabinet frame. Victoria was standing right there, leaning against the door frame with her arms crossed. She'd changed since he'd arrived. Traded the silk robe for jeans and a white button-down that probably cost more than his truck payment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. "It's not great," Lucas admitted, sliding out from under the sink and sitting up. "This joint's been leaking for a while, maybe months. The wood's compromised, and there's corrosion here." He pointed, then realized she probably couldn't see what he was talking about from where she stood. "I can patch it for now, but you're going to need a real fix eventually. New pipes, probably part of the cabinet." Victoria's expression didn't change. She just nodded, processing information the way someone did when they were used to receiving bad news and calculating costs. "How much?" she asked. "For the patch, 200, maybe 250. For the full fix?" Lucas stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "That's bigger. You'd want a couple quotes." "I could do it, but I'd need to bring someone in to handle the cabinet work properly. My carpentry's okay, but for something like this, in a house like this, I trust you," Victoria said, cutting him off. "Do what needs to be done." There it was again, that easy confidence. Like money wasn't a consideration, wasn't even part of the equation. Lucas had been working in this town for 8 years, ever since he'd moved here with Mia, and he still wasn't used to clients who didn't ask about payment plans or try to negotiate him down 20%. "You sure?" he asked. "Because I'm talking 4, maybe 5,000, depending on what we find once we open things up." "I'm sure." Victoria moved past him, peering under the sink herself. She smelled like something expensive. Not perfume exactly, but something subtle, clean. "When can you start?" "The full job? I'd need to order materials, clear my schedule. Week after next, probably." "And the patch?" "I can do that now. Shouldn't take more than an hour." Victoria straightened, and for a moment they were standing closer than Lucas had realized. Close enough that he could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. The kind that came from someone who smiled less than they should. She was younger than he'd thought when he first met her, early 30s maybe, around his age, but she carried herself like someone who'd lived more, seen more, gotten tired of most of it. "I'll leave you to it then," she said, stepping back. "Would you like coffee? Water?" "Water would be great." She disappeared, and Lucas exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He returned to his position under the sink, forcing himself to focus on the work. The wrench, the joint, the steady drip that needed stopping. Except his mind kept drifting. Victoria Kane. He'd heard the stories, same as everyone in town. The mysterious woman who'd bought the old Patterson estate 2 years ago and barely left the property. Some people said she was a tech entrepreneur who'd cashed out early. Others claimed she was old money, East Coast family that had disowned her. Lucas had even heard someone at Murphy's bar insist she was a witness in some federal case, hiding out in the middle of nowhere. Lucas didn't care about any of that. What he cared about was that she'd hired him 3 times now, paid him fairly, and never once made him feel like the help. That was rare enough to be noteworthy. The wrench slipped again. "Damn it," Lucas muttered, his knuckles scraping against the pipe. A thin line of blood appeared across his skin. "Here." Victoria was back, holding out a glass of water in one hand and a first aid kit in the other. Lucas hadn't even heard her approach. "I'm fine," he said automatically. "Your hand's bleeding." "Yeah, well, happens." She set the water down and opened the first aid kit, pulling out an antiseptic wipe. "May I?" It wasn't really a question because she was already kneeling down next to him, taking his hand before he could protest. Her touch was gentle but efficient, cleaning the scrape with quick, practiced movements. "You do this a lot?" Lucas asked, trying to ignore how strange it felt to have Victoria Kane, billionaire, recluse, mystery woman, kneeling on her kitchen floor holding his hand. "I used to volunteer at a clinic," she said. "Long time ago. Before I—" She stopped herself, focusing on wrapping a small bandage around his knuckle. "There, that should hold." "Thanks." She stood, leaving the first aid kit on the counter. "I'll be in the study if you need anything." Lucas watched her go, then shook his head and turned back to the sink. He needed to stop getting distracted, needed to remember that this was a job, nothing more. Victoria was a client, a wealthy client who probably had a dozen other people she could call for this kind of work. Except she'd called him. The patch took 45 minutes. Lucas worked methodically, replacing the compromised section of pipe with a temporary seal that would hold for a few weeks. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about this situation was perfect. But it would keep the leak from getting worse until he could come back and do the full repair. He was packing up his tools when he heard it. A crack. Sharp and sudden. Then water. Not dripping. Rushing. Lucas dropped his wrench and scrambled back under the sink. The main line, the one he hadn't touched, the one that should have been fine, had split. Water was pouring out, flooding the cabinet, spreading across the kitchen floor in a growing pool. Shit, 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 shit! He grabbed for the shutoff valve, but it was stuck. Corroded or painted over or just old enough that it wouldn't budge. Water was everywhere now, soaking through his jeans, his shirt, rushing toward the hallway. "Victoria!" Lucas shouted, fighting with the valve. "I need the main shutoff. Where's your main water shutoff?" No answer. The water was ankle deep and rising. Lucas made a decision. He couldn't wait. Couldn't let this flood destroy her kitchen, her floors, everything. He needed to stop this now. He turned and ran, not walked, ran, through the house, dripping water across hardwood floors that probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. The house was massive, room after room, and he had no idea where anything was. "Victoria!" He found stairs, took them 2 at a time. The second floor was just as sprawling. Bedrooms, a library, doors that were closed. One was cracked open. Lucas pushed through and stopped. Victoria was there, standing by a window, completely naked. For a fraction of a second, maybe less, maybe more, time did a weird thing where it both stopped and accelerated. Lucas's brain simply couldn't process what he was seeing. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't the water main. He blurted out, spinning around so fast he nearly fell over. His face was on fire. "Where's your main water shutoff?" The pipe burst. "The kitchen's flooding. I need to—I'm sorry, I didn't— Where is it?" There was a pause. A terrible stretching pause. Then Victoria's voice, remarkably calm considering the circumstances. Basement, far wall, metal box. Lucas ran. Didn't look back. Couldn't look back. He found the stairs, the basement, the metal box. His hands were shaking from adrenaline or embarrassment or both, but he managed to shut off the main valve. The house went quiet. No more rushing water, no more disaster. Just Lucas, standing in a stranger's basement, soaking wet and trying to remember how to breathe like a normal person. He should leave, should grab his tools and get out before this got any more awkward. But he'd left everything upstairs, and there was still water all over her kitchen, and he couldn't just abandon a job half finished, even if he had just walked in on his client in the most mortifying way possible. Lucas forced himself back upstairs. The kitchen was a mess, water covering the floor, the cabinet ruined beyond any quick fix. He found towels under the sink, started soaking up what he could. Lucas? He didn't turn around. Couldn't. I'm cleaning up. I'll fix this. All of this. I'll replace the flooring if I have to. Lucas. Victoria's voice was closer now. Look at me. He did, reluctantly. She was dressed now, same jeans, same white shirt, though her hair was damp like she'd run water through it quickly. Her expression was unreadable. I'm sorry, Lucas said. The words came out rushed, tripping over themselves. I should have knocked. Should have shouted louder. I wasn't thinking, I just panicked because of the water, and I didn't mean to... Stop. Victoria held up a hand. It was an emergency. You handled it. I shouldn't have... You shut off the water before my kitchen became a swimming pool. That's what matters. Lucas stared at her. She was handling this better than he was, which somehow made it worse. You're really not upset? About you seeing me naked? A faint smile tugged at the corner of Victoria's mouth. I've had worse Tuesdays. Despite everything, Lucas almost laughed. Almost. Still, I'm sorry. Apology noted. Victoria looked around the kitchen, assessing the damage with the same calm she'd shown earlier. So, how bad? Bad, Lucas admitted. The pipe that burst, that's old galvanized steel, probably original to the house. The whole system needs replacing, not just the section under the sink. And your floors, he gestured at the water-damaged hardwood. These might be salvageable if we dry them fast enough, but I can't promise anything. Victoria nodded slowly. And the cost? More than $5,000, probably closer to 10, maybe 12, depending on how extensive the pipe replacement needs to be. Do it, Lucas blinked. You don't want to think about it? Get other quotes? I want it fixed. I want it done right, and I trust you to do it. Victoria crossed her arms, and for the first time, Lucas saw something in her expression that looked almost vulnerable. Unless you'd rather not, given everything? No, Lucas said quickly, too quickly. I mean, yes, I'll do it. I just thought you might want someone else, after you saw me naked while preventing a flood? Victoria's smile widened slightly. Lucas, if that's the worst thing a contractor's done in my house, I'll consider myself lucky. Besides, you apologized. Twice. That's 2 more times than necessary. Lucas didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the fact that Victoria Kane, mystery billionaire, impossible client, was standing in her flooded kitchen making jokes about the most embarrassing moment of his professional life. I should start drying this out, he said finally, gesturing to the floor. Do you have a wet vac? Or I can run and get mine. I'll check the garage. Victoria stepped around a puddle, heading for the door. Then she paused, glancing back. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you for moving fast, for caring enough to panic. She left before he could respond. Lucas stood there, surrounded by water and ruined wood and the lingering scent of whatever expensive thing Victoria wore, and tried to figure out what the hell had just happened. Chuck. The next 3 hours were a blur of mopping, vacuuming, and setting up fans to dry the hardwood. Victoria stayed out of the way, mostly, though Lucas caught glimpses of her moving through other parts of the house. At one point, she brought him coffee. Good coffee, the kind that didn't come from a gas station, and a sandwich she'd apparently made while he worked. You don't have to do that, Lucas said, accepting both anyway. You've been here since 8, Victoria pointed out. It's past 2. Eat. She was right. Lucas hadn't even noticed the time passing, hadn't thought about Mia's soccer practice or the other jobs he was supposed to squeeze in today. His phone had been buzzing periodically, but he'd ignored it, too focused on damage control. Now, sitting on Victoria's back porch with a turkey sandwich and coffee that probably cost more per pound than his usual brand, Lucas finally checked his messages. 3 from his sister, asking about picking up Mia. 1 from Mia herself, a string of emojis he couldn't decipher. And 1 from his ex-wife, Karen. Heard you're working at the Kane place. Must be nice, getting paid to hang out with billionaires while I'm stuck with the school run. Lucas deleted that one without responding. Karen had been texting more lately, little barbs disguised as friendly check-ins. He didn't have the energy to engage. Everything okay? Victoria had appeared in the doorway. She did that, moved quietly, appeared without warning. Lucas wondered if it was intentional or just a side effect of living alone in a house this size. Yeah, he said. Just family stuff. You have a daughter, right? I remember you mentioning her. Mia, she's 7. Lucas pulled out his phone, showing Victoria the lock screen photo. Mia, grinning with 2 missing teeth, holding up a soccer trophy that was almost as big as she was. She's beautiful, Victoria said, and there was something in her voice, something soft and maybe sad, that made Lucas look up. Thanks. She's a handful, but... He shrugged. She's my handful. You raise her alone? Mostly. Her mom's around, but we split when Mia was 3. It's been just us ever since. Lucas didn't usually talk about this stuff with clients, but something about Victoria made it feel less strange. Or maybe he was just tired. What about you, family? No. The word came out quick and final, then softer. Not anymore. Lucas wanted to ask more, but the look on Victoria's face told him not to. Instead, he finished his sandwich and stood, brushing crumbs off his jeans. I should get going, he said. The floors are as dry as they're going to get today. I'll need to come back tomorrow to check on them, start planning the pipe replacement. What time works for you? Morning, probably. 8 or 9? 8's fine. Victoria walked him back through the house, past the fan still humming in the kitchen. At the front door, she paused. Lucas? Yeah? About earlier. What happened? She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. I'd appreciate it if that stayed between us. Of course, Lucas said immediately. I would never... that's your business, your privacy. I'm not going to tell anyone. I know. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. That's why I hired you. Lucas didn't know what to make of that, so he just nodded and headed for his truck. As he loaded his tools into the bed, he caught Victoria watching from the window. She raised a hand in a small wave. Lucas waved back, then climbed into the driver's seat and sat there for a moment, trying to process the day. He'd taken a simple plumbing job and turned it into a flood, a disaster, and the single most awkward moment of his life. He should feel terrible, should be dreading tomorrow, dreading having to face Victoria again. Instead, he felt something else, something he couldn't quite name. The truck started with its usual grinding complaint, and Lucas headed home, already thinking about pipe specifications and flooring contractors and how he was going to explain to Mia why he'd missed her soccer practice. He didn't think about the way Victoria's hand had felt, bandaging his knuckle. He didn't think about how calm she'd been, even when he'd burst into her room. He definitely didn't think about the split second before he'd turned around. The image burned into his brain despite every effort to forget it. No, he didn't think about any of that, except he did, all the way home. Cement. Mia was already at his sister's house when Lucas pulled up. She came running out before he'd even turned off the engine, her soccer bag bouncing against her hip. Dad, you missed it! I scored 2 goals! 2? Lucas scooped her up, ignoring the way his back protested. That's amazing, kiddo. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Aunt Rachel filmed it, Mia said, squirming down. Can we watch it? Can we? Please? Rachel appeared on the porch, arms crossed, wearing her signature expression of fond exasperation. She's been asking every 5 minutes since the game ended. Yeah, we can watch it, Lucas said, ruffling Mia's hair. After dinner, and after you tell me about school. School was boring. Soccer was good. Can we have pizza? We had pizza 3 times this week. So? That means we can have it a 4th time. Mia's logic was unassailable, as always. Rachel laughed. Good luck with that one. She's got your stubbornness. Great, Lucas muttered. That's exactly what I need. He got Mia settled in the truck, then turned back to Rachel. Thanks for grabbing her. I owe you. You owe me about 50 favors at this point, but who's counting? Rachel's expression turned more serious. Everything okay? You look tired. Long day. Complicated job. The Kane place? Yeah. Rachel whistled low. Karen texted me about that. Said something about you moving up in the world. Karen needs a hobby. Karen needs therapy, but that's a different conversation. Rachel squeezed his arm. Seriously, though, you good? Lucas thought about water and broken pipes and Victoria standing by her window, backlit and impossible. I'm good, he lied. Just tired. Well, go home. Feed your kid something that isn't pizza. Get some sleep. Yes, ma'am? The drive home took 15 minutes, most of it filled with Mia recounting her soccer game in excruciating detail. Lucas made appropriate noises of approval and amazement, only half listening, his mind still stuck in Victoria's kitchen. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, barely enough space for all of Mia's stuff, plus his tools. But it was theirs, paid for with honest work and careful budgeting. Lucas had never wanted anything fancy, never needed it, except lately, working in houses like Victoria's, he'd started noticing the difference. Not wanting it, exactly, just noticing. Dad, you're not listening. Lucas blinked. Mia was staring at him from the passenger seat, her expression suspicious. Sorry, kiddo. What'd you say? I said, can Emma sleep over this weekend? Emma with the purple backpack? No, that's Emma C. I mean, Emma R. with the dog. Right, sure, I'll text her mom. Mia beamed, satisfied, and went back to playing some game on the tablet Lucas let her use for car rides. Inside the apartment, Lucas microwaved leftover pasta while Mia changed out of her soccer gear. He should call the lumberyard, price out materials for the Kane job, should update his schedule, move things around to accommodate the bigger project, should do a lot of things. Instead, he found himself standing at the kitchen window, looking out at nothing, replaying the day in his head. Victoria's voice, calm even in crisis. Her hand, steady as she bandaged his knuckle. The way she'd smiled, small and genuine, when he'd shown her Mia's picture. Dad! Yeah? Lucas turned to find Mia holding up the tablet, some video paused mid-action. You said we could watch my goals. Right, yeah, let's do that. They settled on the couch, Mia tucked under his arm, and watched shaky phone footage of small children chasing a soccer ball with varying degrees of success. Lucas made enthusiastic comments at appropriate moments, praised Mia's footwork, and tried not to think about tomorrow. Tried not to think about showing up at Victoria's house again, facing the awkwardness head-on. Tried not to think about the fact that he was, against all logic and reason, looking forward to it. That night, after Mia was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Lucas sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and a beer. He pulled up supplier websites, pricing out copper pipes, and PEX tubing, and everything he'd need to replumb Victoria's house properly. The numbers were bigger than he'd estimated, closer to 15,000 than 12, especially if he wanted to do it right. He should call Victoria, warn her about the increased cost. He should. Instead, Lucas opened a new tab and, feeling ridiculous, typed Victoria Kane into the search bar. The results were sparse. A few mentions in business articles from 6-7 years ago. Board member positions at companies Lucas had never heard of. One photo, blurry, taken from a distance, at some charity gala. Victoria in a black dress, looking elegant and profoundly uncomfortable. Nothing recent, nothing that explained why she'd left that world behind and ended up here, in a western town where the most exciting thing that happened was the annual rodeo. Lucas closed the laptop and finished his beer. This was stupid. Victoria was a client, a very wealthy client who'd hired him to fix her pipes, not to dig into her past or wonder about her life. Tomorrow, he'd show up, act professional, and pretend today hadn't happened. That was the plan. Except Lucas had never been great at sticking to plans, especially when they involved pretending he didn't feel things he definitely felt. He went to bed and dreamed of water and broken pipes and a woman standing by a window, just out of reach. Morning came too early. Mia had to be reminded 4 times to brush her teeth. The coffee maker chose today to start making a noise that definitely wasn't normal, and Lucas realized halfway to his sister's house that he'd forgotten to pack Mia's lunch. "Dad, it's fine," Mia said, with the infinite patience of a 7-year-old who'd learned to tolerate her father's chaos. "They have pizza at school on Wednesdays." "That's not lunch. That's a snack shaped like lunch." "You're weird about food." "I'm responsible about food." "There's a difference." Mia just rolled her eyes, which was terrifying because she was 7 and already perfecting the teenage dismissal. Lucas made a mental note to ask Rachel if this was normal. By the time he dropped Mia off and headed toward Ridgeline Drive, it was 7:45. Early, but Lucas figured showing up ahead of schedule would make him look professional. Eager. Definitely not like someone who'd spent half the night Googling his client and the other half lying awake replaying the most embarrassing moment of his career. Victoria's house looked different in the morning light, less imposing, the kind of place that might have been someone's dream home once, before it became just a building where one person lived alone. Lucas grabbed his toolbox and headed for the front door. He was reaching for the bell when the door opened. Victoria stood there, holding a coffee mug, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked soft and expensive. Her hair was down today, falling past her shoulders in waves that caught the light. "You're early," she said. "Yeah, sorry, I can come back." "Don't be ridiculous, come in." Victoria stepped aside, gesturing him through. "Coffee?" "I'm good, thanks." "You sure?" "It's the good stuff. Not whatever gas station burnt offering you usually drink." Lucas stopped, surprised. "How do you know I drink gas station coffee?" "You have that look." Victoria's smile was teasing, which was somehow worse than if she'd been serious. "The I prioritize caffeine over flavor look." "That's fair," Lucas admitted, following her to the kitchen. The fans were gone, the floor mostly dry. He knelt down, checking for warping or water damage. "How'd these hold up overnight?" "They seem fine. No buckling that I can see." Lucas ran his hand across the wood, feeling for soft spots. "You got lucky. Another hour of water and these would have been ruined." "So you saved my floors and saw me naked," Victoria said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "Quite a Tuesday." Lucas's face went hot. "We said we weren't going to talk about that." "I said I wanted it kept private. I didn't say we couldn't acknowledge it happened." Victoria leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee. "Besides, if we're going to be working together for the next couple weeks, we might as well address the elephant in the room." "The elephant being that you've seen me naked and you're currently turning red just thinking about it." Lucas stood abruptly, focusing very hard on his toolbox. That's not..." "Lucas." Victoria's voice was gentler now. "I'm not upset. I'm not embarrassed. Well, maybe a little embarrassed, but mostly I'm trying to make sure you don't spend the next 2 weeks walking on eggshells around me." Lucas forced himself to meet her eyes. She looked amused, but there was something else there too. Understanding, maybe. "I really am sorry." "I know, and I really don't need you to keep apologizing." Victoria set down her mug and crossed her arms. "How about this? We agree that yesterday was weird. We're both adults who can move past weird. And we focus on fixing my plumbing instead of dwelling on my lack of clothing." Despite himself, Lucas laughed. "Okay, yeah, we can do that." "Good." Victoria's smile turned more businesslike. "So what's the plan?" They spent the next hour going over the work. Lucas explained the scope, replacing the main water line from the street connection all the way through the house, updating the galvanized steel to modern PEX tubing, installing new shutoff valves at strategic points. Victoria listened, asked smart questions, and approved everything without blinking at the cost estimate. 15,000, she repeated when Lucas finally gave her the number. "That's fine. You sure? Because that's not including the cabinet replacement or any cosmetic work on the walls where I'll need to access the pipes." "I'm sure." Victoria glanced around the kitchen, her expression distant. "This house needs work anyway. Might as well start with the important stuff." "How long have you been here?" Lucas asked, then immediately regretted it. Too personal. Too much like curiosity instead of professional interest. But Victoria didn't seem to mind. 2 years. Bought it sight unseen, actually. My realtor thought I was crazy." "Were you?" "Probably." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere away from everything." This seemed like the right kind of nowhere. Lucas understood that more than he wanted to admit. "I came here for similar reasons." After the divorce. Needed a fresh start somewhere Mia wouldn't have to hear Karen and me fighting through the walls. It's a good town for fresh starts, Victoria said. People mostly mind their own business. Mostly? Well, there's always the gossip, but that's half the entertainment. Lucas laughed again, surprised by how easy this was, how talking to Victoria felt less like client-contractor and more like something else, something he didn't have a name for yet. I should get started, he said, more to break the moment than because he actually needed to start right that second. The sooner I begin, the sooner you'll have working plumbing again. I'll be in the study if you need anything. Victoria paused at the doorway. And Lucas, thank you for taking this on. I know it's a big job. It's what I do. Still, thank you. She left, and Lucas found himself standing in the kitchen again, surrounded by expensive appliances and custom cabinets and the lingering scent of Victoria's coffee. He should focus, should get to work, should stop noticing things like the way she smiled or the sound of her voice or the fact that she'd gone out of her way to make him feel comfortable after yesterday's disaster. Lucas pulled out his phone and started making calls to schedule subcontractors. This was going to be a long couple of weeks, longer than he'd expected, in ways he definitely hadn't anticipated. But as he stood there, planning pipe routes and calculating load requirements and trying not to think about Victoria in the next room, Lucas realized something. He was looking forward to it. All of it. And that more than anything else should have been his first warning that this job was going to be different, that Victoria Kane was different, that he was in serious trouble, and the pipes were the least of his problems. The work took over Lucas's life in ways he hadn't anticipated. For the next week, he arrived at Victoria's house every morning at 8, and didn't leave until well past 5. The project was massive, tearing into walls, rerouting pipes, discovering problems that hadn't been visible until he'd opened things up. Every day brought new complications, new costs, new reasons to stay longer than he'd planned. Victoria never complained about the mess, never hovered or questioned his decisions. She just moved through the house like a shadow, appearing occasionally with coffee or lunch, asking if he needed anything, then disappearing again into whatever part of the building she'd claimed as her temporary refuge from the construction chaos. It was Thursday afternoon when Lucas found the real problem. He'd been tracing the main line through the basement, mapping out where the old galvanized steel ran, when he noticed a section of wall that sounded hollow. Wrong. He tapped it with his knuckles, hearing the echo of empty space behind plaster that should have been solid. "Victoria," he called up the stairs. "Can you come down here a second?" She appeared a minute later, descending the basement steps carefully. She was wearing different clothes today, black pants and a gray sweater that made her look softer somehow. Less like the mysterious billionaire and more like someone who might actually live in this town. "What's wrong?" she asked, joining him by the wall. "This," Lucas tapped the section again. "There's a void here, probably 18 inches deep, and based on the pipe routing, I'm betting the original plumbers ran the main line through this cavity." "Is that bad?" "It's not great. If there's been any leaking, and given the age of these pipes, there probably has been, we could be looking at mold, rot, structural damage." Lucas pulled out his utility knife. "I need to open this up. You okay with that?" Victoria nodded. "Do what you need to do." Lucas cut through the plaster carefully, peeling back sections to reveal the space behind. The smell hit him first, musty, damp, the unmistakable scent of water damage. Then he saw it. The pipe running through the cavity was green with corrosion, weeping water at every joint. The wooden studs around it were black with mold, soft enough that Lucas could push his finger through them. "How bad?" Victoria asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "Bad," Lucas said. "This whole section needs to come out. The studs, the pipe, everything. And we need to treat for mold before we rebuild. More money. Yeah, probably another 3,000 or 4,000, depending on how far the damage spreads." Victoria was quiet for a moment, studying the exposed wall with an expression Lucas couldn't read. Then she said, "Do you ever feel like everything's rotting from the inside? Like no matter how good things look on the surface, underneath it's all just falling apart?" The question caught Lucas off guard. He lowered his knife, turning to look at her properly. "You talking about the house?" "Sure," Victoria said. "Let's say I'm talking about the house." Lucas understood subtext when he heard it. "Sometimes," he said carefully. "But the thing about rot is, Once you find it, you can fix it. Cut out the bad parts, replace them with something solid. Doesn't mean it was a waste, just means it needed attention sooner. Victoria met his eyes, and for a second, Lucas felt like they were having a completely different conversation, one that had nothing to do with pipes or mold or construction costs. Well, she said finally, stepping back, I guess we'd better get started then. The next 3 days were brutal. Lucas brought in a mold remediation specialist, waited for clearance, then tore out an entire section of basement wall. The damage was worse than he'd thought, spreading into the floor joists above, requiring work that pushed his timeline back another week. Victoria took it all in stride. She'd shifted her daily routine to avoid the worst of the construction noise, spending mornings in town and afternoons in the parts of the house Lucas wasn't currently destroying. But she always checked in before she left, always asked if he needed anything, always seemed genuinely interested in the work. It was Friday evening when things shifted. Lucas was packing up his tools later than usual because he'd wanted to finish sealing the new vapor barrier before the weekend. He was covered in dust and sweat, his back aching from hours of awkward positions when Victoria appeared at the basement door. "You're still here," she said. "Just finishing up. I'll be out of your hair in 10 minutes. "Lucas, it's almost 7. When's the last time you ate?" He tried to remember. "Breakfast? Maybe." He'd skipped lunch to stay on schedule. "I'll grab something on the way home." Victoria made a noise that sounded suspiciously like disapproval. "I'm ordering Thai food. You want some?" "You don't have to." "I'm ordering it anyway. Would you prefer pad Thai or green curry?" Lucas hesitated. This felt like crossing a line somehow, eating with a client, staying past work hours for reasons that had nothing to do with plumbing. But his stomach was loudly voting in favor of food, and Victoria was looking at him with an expression that suggested arguing would be pointless. "Green curry," he said. "Please." "Good choice." Victoria pulled out her phone. "Give me 15 minutes. She disappeared upstairs, and Lucas finished packing his tools, trying to ignore the nervous energy building in his chest. This was fine. This was just dinner. 2 adults sharing a meal because it was convenient, and Lucas happened to be there, and Victoria was probably tired of eating alone in that big house. It didn't mean anything. By the time Lucas made it upstairs, Victoria had set up plates at the kitchen island, the one part of the kitchen that wasn't currently torn apart. The food arrived a few minutes later, delivered by a kid Lucas recognized from Mia's school. Victoria tipped him generously, then brought everything to the counter. "Beer?" she asked, opening the fridge. "You have beer?" "I have a lot of things." Victoria pulled out 2 bottles of something Lucas had definitely never bought at the grocery store. Craft beer with labels that looked like art projects. "I don't drink it often, but when contractors work this hard on my house, I make exceptions." Lucas accepted the bottle, taking a long drink. It was good. Better than good. The kind of beer people wrote pretentious reviews about. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Lucas too hungry to care about manners, Victoria picking at her food with the deliberate movements of someone who'd learned to eat slowly at fancy dinners. The curry was excellent, spicy enough to make Lucas's eyes water, rich enough to justify the probably ridiculous delivery fee. "So," Victoria said eventually, "tell me about Mia. You said she plays soccer." "Yeah, she's obsessed. Practices in the backyard every night, watches games on YouTube, sleeps in her jersey half the time." Lucas smiled, thinking about his daughter. "She's good too, better than I was at her age." "You played?" "High school. I was decent, but not scholarship material, definitely not pro level." Lucas took another drink. "What about you? Any secret athletic talents?" Victoria laughed, and it was a real laugh this time. Not the polite version she used when something was mildly amusing. "I was terrible at sports. Completely uncoordinated. My parents put me in tennis lessons for 3 years, and I never made it past the beginner court." 3 years? That takes dedication to being bad. "I'm very committed to my failures." Victoria's smile turned wry. "My mother eventually gave up and enrolled me in piano instead. Figured if I couldn't move gracefully, at least I could sit still." "Can you play?" "Not anymore. I haven't touched a piano in years." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Regret, maybe, or just the weight of time. "I used to be pretty good, actually. Before I decided making money was more important than making music." Lucas wanted to ask about that. about the life Victoria had left behind, the choices that had led her to this town, this house, this moment. But he could see the walls going up in her expression, the subtle shift from open to guarded. I get that, he said instead, choosing practical over what you actually want. I wanted to be an architect when I was younger, design buildings, create spaces, all that idealistic stuff. Then Mia came along, and I realized architecture school wasn't compatible with diapers and daycare. Do you regret it? No, maybe sometimes. But Mia's worth more than any building I could have designed. Lucas pushed his empty plate aside. Besides, I like what I do now, fixing things, making them work. There's something satisfying about taking a problem and actually solving it. Unlike life, Victoria said quietly. Unlike life, Lucas agreed. They fell into silence again, but it felt different this time. Heavier, like they were both thinking about things they couldn't say out loud. Victoria broke it first. Thank you for staying, for eating with me. I know it's probably weird, having dinner with a client. It's not weird, Lucas said, lying only a little. It's nice. I usually eat leftovers standing at my kitchen counter while Mia tells me about her day. This is an upgrade. Well, my standards for dinner conversation are pretty low these days, so I'm glad I could upgrade something. Victoria stood, collecting plates. How's the project looking? Honestly, we're about 60% done. The mold remediation set us back, but once that's cleared, the actual pipe replacement should go faster. Another week, maybe 10 days, and you'll have a fully functional plumbing system that'll last 30 years. And the cost? Lucas winced. $18,000, give or take. I'm trying to keep it under 20, but… Lucas, Victoria interrupted him gently. I'm not worried about the cost. I'm worried about you working yourself to death trying to save me money I don't need to save. I just don't want to take advantage. You're not. You're doing good work. You're fixing problems other contractors would have ignored or covered up. That's worth paying for. Victoria leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Besides, you saw me naked. The least I can do is pay you fairly. Lucas choked on his beer. Did you seriously just… I did. Victoria's smile was wicked. Someone had to say it eventually. We agreed not to talk about that. No, you got embarrassed and I agreed to keep it private. Talking about it just between us doesn't violate privacy. Lucas shook his head, trying not to laugh. You're enjoying this way too much. I really am. Victoria's smile softened. It's been a long time since I got to tease someone. I'd forgotten how fun it is. Happy to be your entertainment. You are, actually. Victoria said it lightly, but there was something underneath the words. Something sincere. It's nice having someone around, even if that someone is covered in drywall dust and probably judging my beer choices. I'm not judging. This beer is amazing. I'm just calculating how many months of grocery money it costs. Stop that, Victoria pointed at him. You're doing the thing where you make everything about class differences. Because there are class differences. You live in a house that costs more than I'll make in my lifetime. You order Thai food on a Friday night like it's nothing. Your beer probably costs more per bottle than my entire six-pack. So? Victoria's expression turned challenging. Does that mean we can't eat dinner together? Can't have a conversation? Can't be… whatever this is? Lucas didn't have an answer for that. Didn't know what this was exactly. Client and contractor? Friends? Something else that didn't have a name yet? I don't know, he said honestly. I'm making it up as I go. Good, Victoria said. So am I. The moment stretched between them, loaded with things neither of them was ready to say. Then Lucas's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. He glanced at it. Rachel, asking about picking up Mia tomorrow. I should go, Lucas said, standing. Early start tomorrow. You're working weekends now? Just Saturday morning. Want to get the new main line installed before Monday. Lucas grabbed his jacket, then paused. Thanks for dinner and the conversation, and for not being weird about everything. Thank you for fixing my house, Victoria said, and for the conversation, and for also not being weird about everything. Lucas headed for the door, then stopped in the hallway. Victoria? Yeah? This thing we're doing, the not being weird thing. I like it. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. Me too. Lucas drove home with Thai food smells still clinging to his clothes and Victoria's laugh echoing in his head. He shouldn't be thinking about her like this. Shouldn't be noticing the way she smiled, or the sound of her voice, or the fact that eating dinner with her had felt more natural than half the dates he'd been on since the divorce. She was a client, a temporary presence in his life. Once the pipes were fixed, they'd go back to being strangers who occasionally nodded hello if they passed each other in town. That was how it should be. That was how it would be. Lucas repeated it to himself all the way home, trying to make it sound convincing. It didn't work. The weekend passed in a blur of Mia's soccer games and grocery shopping and trying to catch up on the other small jobs Lucas had been neglecting. Sunday afternoon, he found himself at Murphy's bar, nursing a beer and half watching a baseball game on the television above the bar. "Heard you're working on the Kane place." Lucas turned to find Tom Murphy himself, owner and bartender, wiping down the counter with the same rag he'd been using for the past decade. "Word travels fast," Lucas said. "It's a small town. Rich lady hires a contractor, people talk." Tom refilled Lucas's beer without asking. "What's she like?" "Victoria? She's..." Lucas struggled to find words that didn't reveal too much. "Nice. Normal. Easier to work with than most clients." "Normal?" Tom snorted. "Woman buys $1 million house cash, barely leaves the property for 2 years. And you're calling her normal? Maybe she just likes her privacy. Or maybe she's hiding something." Lucas felt a flash of defensiveness that surprised him. Or maybe she's just someone who wanted to get away from wherever she came from. That's not a crime. Tom raised his hands in surrender. "Hey, no judgment from me, just making conversation." Lucas took a long drink, trying to settle the irritation rising in his chest. He didn't owe Tom explanations about Victoria. Didn't owe anyone explanations. But the gossip bothered him more than it should have. He was paying for his beer when the door opened and Victoria walked in. For a second, Lucas thought he was imagining it. Victoria Kane didn't come to Murphy's. Victoria Kane didn't come to anywhere in town if she could help it. But there she was, standing in the doorway, like she'd just stepped into foreign territory, scanning the room with an expression that was equal parts curious and cautious. Her eyes found Lucas. Something in her face relaxed. She crossed the bar, ignoring the few other patrons who'd stopped their conversations to stare, and slid onto the stool next to him. "Hey," she said. "Hey," Lucas managed, still processing. "What are you doing here?" "Drinking, apparently." Victoria glanced at Tom. "Whatever he's having." Tom looked between them, clearly recalibrating every assumption he'd just made, then poured Victoria a beer with his best customer service smile. "First one's on the house. Welcome to Murphy's." "Thanks." Victoria took a sip, made a face. "This is terrible." "Told you," Lucas said. "It's not your fancy craft beer." "No, it's definitely not." But Victoria took another drink anyway. "So this is where everyone in town hangs out? More or less? It's not much, but it's ours." "I like it." Victoria looked around, taking in the worn wooden booze, the dartboard with more holes than board, the jukebox that only played country and classic rock. "It feels real, as opposed to?" "As opposed to places that are trying to be something they're not." Victoria turned to face him, and Lucas realized how close they were sitting, close enough to smell whatever subtle perfume she wore, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "I followed you here." Lucas blinked. "What?" "I was driving through town, saw your truck, and decided to stop. I know that sounds stalkerish, but I didn't know how else to..." Victoria stopped herself, took another drink. "I wanted to see you. Outside the house. Outside the context of you being my contractor and me being your weird, reclusive client." "You're not weird," Lucas said automatically. "I'm a little weird." "Okay, you're a little weird, but so is everyone." Lucas smiled despite himself. "Why'd you want to see me?" Victoria was quiet for a moment, turning her beer glass in slow circles on the bar top. "Because I had a good time Friday, talking to you, eating dinner like normal people. And I realized I haven't had that in a really long time. Normal. So I thought maybe we could do it again." "We're doing it now," Lucas pointed out. "We are." Victoria's smile was tentative. "Is that okay?" Lucas should say no. Should remember all the reasons this was a bad idea. Client boundaries. Class differences. The fact that Victoria would probably leave this town the moment she got bored and Lucas would be left behind wondering what the hell he'd been thinking. Instead, he said, Yeah, it's okay. They sat there for an hour, drinking terrible beer and talking about nothing important. Victoria asked about Mia, about Lucas's work, about what it was like growing up in a small town. Lucas asked about Victoria's life before, carefully skirting around the specifics she clearly didn't want to share. It was easy, natural, the kind of conversation that felt like something they'd been having for years instead of weeks. At some point, a few more people drifted into the bar. Lucas recognized most of them, neighbors, other contractors, people he'd known since moving here. They nodded hello, shot curious glances at Victoria, then went back to their own drinks and conversations. They're staring, Victoria said quietly. Little bit, yeah. Does that bother you? Lucas thought about it. No. Does it bother you? Not as much as I thought it would. Victoria finished her beer. Another? You sure? That stuff really is terrible. I'm developing a taste for it. Tom brought 2 more beers, and Lucas noticed the way the bartender's expression had shifted. Less suspicious, more approving. Like Victoria had passed some invisible small-town test by sitting in Murphy's and drinking cheap beer with a local handyman. So, Victoria said, drawing the word out, I have a confession. Another one? I'm full of confessions tonight. She turned to face him more fully, her knee brushing against his. I've been asking you to fix things that don't actually need fixing. Lucas felt his eyebrows rise. What? The porch railing? It was fine. A little wobbly, but fine. The kitchen sink before everything went sideways? That was a slow drip I could have ignored for months. Victoria's cheeks were slightly pink, though Lucas couldn't tell if it was from the beer or embarrassment. I kept calling you because I wanted an excuse to see you. Victoria, I know, it's weird. You can tell me it's weird. It's not weird, Lucas said, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. I don't know what it is, but it's not weird. No? No. Lucas took a drink, buying himself time to figure out what he was actually feeling. You want the truth? Always. I've been taking longer on this job than I needed to, finding extra problems, being more thorough than necessary. Because working at your house is the best part of my week. Victoria's smile was slow and dangerous. Lucas Hayes, are you saying you've been scamming me? I'm saying I've been doing very thorough work. Huh? Victoria's eyes were bright, amused. And how much of this thorough work was actually necessary? All of it, Lucas insisted. I'm not charging you for things you don't need. I'm just taking my time with the things you do need. Taking your time so you can keep coming back. Maybe? That's extremely unprofessional. I know. And kind of sweet. Lucas felt his face heat. Don't make fun of me. I'm not. Victoria's hand found his on the bar, her fingers cool against his skin. I'm really not. I'm just glad I'm not the only one who's been making excuses. They sat there, hands touching on the sticky bar top, surrounded by the noise of other people's conversations and the tinny sound of country music from the jukebox. Lucas knew people were probably watching, knew this would be all over town by tomorrow morning, knew he should care more than he did, but all he could focus on was the way Victoria was looking at him, like he was something unexpected, something good. I should go, Victoria said eventually, though she didn't move. It's getting late. Yeah. Lucas didn't let go of her hand. You okay to drive? I had 2 beers over 90 minutes. I think I'll survive. Still, text me when you get home? Victoria's smile turned soft. You worried about me, Hayes? Maybe a little. Okay. She squeezed his hand once, then released it. I'll text you. Victoria stood, grabbing her jacket from the back of the stool. She paused, looking down at him. This was nice. We should do it again. The terrible beer or the conversation? Both. Lucas watched her leave, aware of Tom's eyes on him from across the bar. He didn't care. Let the whole town talk. Let them speculate about what Lucas Hayes was doing drinking with Victoria Kane on a Sunday night. His phone buzzed 20 minutes later, made it home. Thanks for the beer recommendation. Still terrible, but in a charming way. Lucas smiled, typing back, You're welcome. Same time next week? It's a date. Lucas stared at the message, those 3 words doing something dangerous to his thoughts. A date. Was that what this was becoming? what they were becoming. He didn't know. But driving home that night, windows down and radio playing something he didn't recognize, Lucas realized he wanted to find out. Wanted to see where this thing with Victoria was going, even if it was probably nowhere. Even if she'd leave eventually, and Lucas would go back to his normal life of soccer games and small repairs and quiet evenings in his too small apartment. For now, this was enough. Victoria's hand in his, her smile across a bar, the promise of next week. It was enough. The week that followed felt different. Lucas still showed up at Victoria's house every morning, still tore into walls and replaced pipes and made slow, steady progress on the project. But now there were inside jokes, shared glances, coffee breaks that stretched longer than they should have, filled with conversations that had nothing to do with plumbing. Victoria started staying home more during the day. She'd set up her laptop at the kitchen island, working on whatever it was she did for money, looking up occasionally to ask Lucas questions or make observations about the work. Sometimes she'd just watch him, her expression thoughtful in a way that made Lucas hyper-aware of every movement he made. "You're staring again," he said Wednesday afternoon, not looking up from the pipe fitting he was tightening. "I'm observing," Victoria corrected. "There's a difference." "What are you observing?" "How you work. You have this thing you do where you check every connection twice, even when you know it's right the first time." Lucas glanced at her. She was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, wearing jeans and a sweater that kept sliding off one shoulder. "That's called being thorough. It's called not trusting yourself. Maybe I just don't like doing things twice. Or maybe you're afraid of making mistakes." Victoria moved closer, peering at his work. "How many times have you had to redo something because you rushed?" "Once, 5 years ago, burst pipe in a bathroom." Lucas set down his wrench. "Flooded the whole second floor. Cost me more to fix than I'd made on the original job." "So you learned." "So I'm careful now." Victoria smiled. "See? Not trusting yourself. You're enjoying this way too much." "I really am." She handed him the coffee mug she'd been holding. "Break time. You've been down here for 3 hours." Lucas accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing in the exchange. These small touches had become more frequent over the past few days. Accidental at first, then less accidental. Neither of them acknowledged it, but neither of them pulled away either. They settled on the basement stairs, sitting side by side in the dusty half-light. Lucas's back ached from crouching all morning, but sitting next to Victoria made it easier to ignore. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said after a moment. "Sure." "Why'd you really move here? You said it was for a fresh start, but that's the kind of answer people give when they don't want to tell the whole story." Lucas took a long drink of coffee, buying time. "Karen cheated," he said finally, "with her boss. I found out, we fought, she moved out. The divorce was messy. A lot of yelling, a lot of lawyers, a lot of Mia crying because she didn't understand why Mommy and Daddy couldn't be in the same room anymore." Victoria was quiet, listening. "I couldn't stay in that town," Lucas continued. "Everywhere I went, people knew. The grocery store, the hardware store, Mia's school. Everyone had opinions about what happened, who was at fault, what I should do. So I packed up, found this place, and started over." "That must have been hard." "It was necessary." Lucas set down his mug. "What about you? What are you running from?" Victoria's laugh was soft and bitter. "What makes you think I'm running?" "Because nobody moves to the middle of nowhere and buys a house cash unless they're trying to get away from something. Maybe I just like the quiet." "Victoria," she sighed, pulling her knees up to her chest. "I ran a company, tech startup. We built software for financial institutions, made a lot of money very quickly. Too quickly, probably. By the time I was 28, we were valued at $200 million, and I was the CEO everyone wanted to interview, the success story everyone wanted to copy." Lucas waited, sensing there was more. "Then we got acquired, billion-dollar deal. I walked away with enough money that I'd never have to work again. Should have been celebrating, right? Should have been the happiest moment of my life." Victoria's voice went flat. "Instead, I had a panic attack in the bathroom during the signing. Realized I didn't know who I was without the company. Didn't know what I wanted or what mattered or why I'd spent 10 years building something just to sell it to people who'd probably destroy everything I'd created." "What happened next?" "I left. Didn't go to the celebration dinner. Didn't answer calls from the board or the investors or the press. Just got in my car and drove until I found somewhere that felt far enough away from all of it. Victoria gestured vaguely at the basement around them. Ended up here. 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Victoria confirmed. Been hiding ever since. Lucas turned to look at her properly. You're not hiding now. No? Victoria met his eyes. What am I doing then? Sitting on a dusty basement stair, drinking coffee with your contractor, telling him things you probably haven't told anyone else. That sounds like hiding with company. Maybe, or maybe it's something else. Victoria held his gaze and Lucas felt that pull again, the one that had been growing stronger all week, the magnetic thing drawing them closer despite every logical reason to maintain distance. He was close enough to see the way her pupils dilated slightly, close enough to notice the small scar above her left eyebrow, close enough to... His phone rang, shattering the moment. Lucas fumbled for it, saw Rachel's name on the screen. Sorry, I need to take this. Go ahead. Lucas stood, moving a few steps away. Hey, Rach, what's up? Mia's running a fever. School called. I can pick her up, but I've got a client meeting at 3 and I can't... I'll get her. Lucas checked his watch, 1:30. Tell the school I'll be there in 20 minutes. You sure? I know you're working. It's fine. She's more important. He ended the call and turned to find Victoria watching him. I have to go. Mia's sick. Of course, go. Is she okay? Fever. Probably just a cold, but I need to get her. Lucas grabbed his jacket, already mentally calculating the fastest route to the school. I'll make up the time tomorrow. Lucas, stop. Your daughter's sick. Take care of her. The pipes can wait. But the timeline? The timeline is flexible. Go. Lucas hesitated, torn between professional obligation and parental responsibility. Victoria crossed the space between them, putting a hand on his arm. Go, she said again, softer this time. I'll still be here tomorrow. Lucas made it to the school in 18 minutes, found Mia in the nurse's office looking small and miserable, her face flushed with fever. She perked up when she saw him, reaching for him with the automatic need of a sick kid who just wants their parent. Hey, kiddo, Lucas said, scooping her up. Feeling rough? Mia nodded against his shoulder. My throat hurts. Yeah? Well, let's get you home. We'll do medicine and cartoons and whatever else sick kids need. The nurse handed him a note about symptoms and went to watch for warning signs, and Lucas carried Mia to the truck. She fell asleep on the drive home, her head lolling against the seatbelt, and Lucas felt that familiar ache of single-parent worry. Was this serious? Should he call the doctor? What if it got worse overnight? Back at the apartment, he settled Mia on the couch with blankets and juice and found a thermometer. 101. Not terrible, but not great. He gave her children's ibuprofen and put on her favorite cartoon, the one about the family of talking dogs that Lucas found mildly annoying but Mia loved. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. How is she? Lucas smiled despite the stress. Fever, sore throat. Probably strep, but we'll see. Thanks for letting me leave. Of course. Let me know if you need anything. He didn't respond, but the offer sat warm in his chest. Victoria barely knew Mia, had never even met her, but she cared enough to ask. That meant something. Mia dozed on and off for the rest of the afternoon, waking occasionally to complain about her throat or ask for more juice. Lucas sat with her, half watching cartoons and half thinking about Victoria sitting in that basement, telling him things she'd probably kept locked up for 2 years. Around 6, Mia woke up more alert, her fever down slightly. Dad? Yeah, kiddo? Can we have soup? What kind? The kind with stars in it. Lucas checked the pantry, found a can of chicken and stars soup that had probably been there for months. He heated it up, brought it to Mia in a bowl with a spoon she could barely hold because her hands felt weak. You're a good dad, Mia said suddenly, her voice hoarse. Lucas felt something catch in his throat. Yeah, what makes you say that? You came and got me. Even though you were working, Mom would have made Aunt Rachel do it. Lucas didn't know what to say to that. Didn't want to disparage Karen, but also couldn't deny the truth of Mia's observation. Well, you're my priority. Work can wait. The lady with the big house, is she nice? Victoria? Yeah, she's nice. Why? You talk about her different, not like other people you work for. Lucas blinked. What do you mean? You smile when you say her name. Mia took another spoonful of soup. Like she makes you happy. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Lucas ruffled Mia's hair, buying himself time to formulate a response that was honest but age-appropriate. She's a friend. I like working for her because she's easy to talk to. Is she pretty? Mia. Aunt Rachel says she's pretty. She saw her at Murphy's with you. Lucas made a mental note to have words with his sister about discretion. Yeah, she's pretty, but that's not why. You should invite her over. To our apartment? Yeah, for dinner or something, like how Emma's parents invite people over. Mia's logic was simple, unaware of the complications. If she's your friend, she should meet me. Lucas considered this. The idea of Victoria in their small apartment, surrounded by Mia's soccer trophies and mismatched furniture and the general chaos of their life, felt both terrifying and oddly appealing. Maybe, he said. We'll see. Mia seemed satisfied with that answer, returning her attention to the soup and the cartoon playing in the background. Lucas cleaned up the kitchen, trying to imagine what Victoria would think of this place. Would she see it as modest or just poor? Would she understand that this was enough, or would the contrast between her world and his become too obvious to ignore? His phone buzzed again. I'm making dinner. Too much for one person. Want me to drop some off? Lucas stared at the message, surprised. You don't have to do that. I know, I want to. What is Mia like? She's 7. She likes anything that isn't vegetables, so no salad. Got it. I'll be there in an hour. Send me your address. Lucas hesitated, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was crossing another line. Having Victoria at his home, meeting his daughter, seeing the reality of his life instead of just the professional version he brought to her house every day. But Mia's words echoed in his head. If she's your friend, she should meet me. Lucas sent the address. 50 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Lucas opened it to find Victoria standing in the hallway, holding 2 bags of takeout containers and looking decidedly out of place in his building's fluorescent lighting. Hey, she said. I brought options. Chicken parmesan, pasta, garlic bread, and this thing the Italian place swore would cure any sick kid. You didn't have to. I know. You keep saying that. Victoria stepped inside, looking around with undisguised curiosity. This is nice, cozy. It wasn't cozy. It was small, and the carpet was stained and the walls needed painting. But Victoria said it like she meant it, setting the bags on the kitchen counter like she belonged there. Mia's on the couch, Lucas said. Fair warning, she's going to ask you a million questions. Good. I like questions. Victoria followed him to the living room where Mia was sitting up now, fever-flushed but curious. Mia, this is Victoria. Victoria, this is Mia. Victoria sat down on the coffee table, putting herself at Mia's eye level. Hey, your dad tells me you're not feeling great. My throat hurts, Mia said, suddenly shy. That's the worst. I brought soup. The Italian restaurant said it has magical healing powers, but I think they might have been lying to sell more soup. Mia giggled, which turned into a cough. Victoria waited patiently until it passed, her expression warm and genuinely concerned. Do you live in the big house? Mia asked. I do. The one your dad's been fixing. Is it nice? It's big. Sometimes too big. Gets lonely. Victoria glanced at Lucas, then back to Mia. Your dad's doing a really good job making it better, though. Miss, he's good at fixing things, Mia said with the absolute confidence children have in their parents. He fixed my bike and the bathroom sink and the doorknob that kept falling off. Sounds like he's very talented. They ate dinner around the coffee table, Mia picking at her soup while Lucas and Victoria shared the pasta and chicken. It was strange and comfortable at the same time, this collision of his two worlds. Victoria asked Mia about soccer, listened intently to 7-year-old explanations of plays and positions, and laughed at jokes that weren't particularly funny but were delivered with Mia's infectious enthusiasm. You're nice, Mia announced halfway through dinner. I like you. I like you too, Victoria said. You're much cooler than most of the people I know. Really? Really? How many of them can score 2 goals in one game? Mia beamed and Lucas felt something shift in his chest. Watching Victoria with his daughter, seeing how natural it was, how genuine, it did something to him. Made the thing growing between them feel more real, more possible. After dinner, Mia's energy crashed again. Lucas got her settled back on the couch with fresh blankets while Victoria cleaned up the kitchen without being asked. When he came back, she was washing dishes at his sink like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You really don't have to do that," Lucas said. "I really don't mind." Victoria rinsed the last plate, drying her hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle. "She's great. You're doing a good job with her." "Thanks. It doesn't always feel like it, but I try." "It shows." Victoria leaned against the counter and they were standing close again, the kitchen suddenly feeling smaller than it was. "Thanks for letting me come over, for letting me meet her. Thanks for bringing dinner and for caring enough to ask." "Lucas." Victoria's voice went softer. "I do care. More than I probably should, given that you're supposed to be just my contractor, and this is supposed to be just a business relationship." "Is that what this is?" Lucas asked. "A business relationship?" "No." Victoria stepped closer, close enough that Lucas could smell her perfume again, that subtle, expensive thing that seemed to follow her everywhere. "I don't think it has been for a while." "What is it then?" "I don't know." Victoria looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "But I want to find out, if you do." Lucas's heart was doing that complicated thing again, beating too fast and too hard. He was aware of Mia sleeping on the couch, just a few feet away, aware of all the reasons this was probably a terrible idea, aware that Victoria could walk away tomorrow and leave him wondering what the hell he'd been thinking. But he was also aware of the way she was looking at him, like he mattered, like this mattered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I want to find out too." Victoria smiled, and it was different from all the other smiles she'd given him. Unguarded, hopeful, real. "Okay then," she said. "Okay." They stood there in Lucas's tiny kitchen, not touching but not moving apart either, and something unspoken settled between them. An agreement, a beginning. Victoria left 20 minutes later, after checking on Mia one more time and making Lucas promise to text if she got worse. At the door, she paused. "Lucas? Yeah?" "I'm glad you burst into my room that day." Lucas felt his face heat. "Really working that angle, huh?" "I'm just saying, if you hadn't, we might still be doing the polite contractor-client thing, and this," she gestured between them, "is much better." "You're terrible." "I am." Victoria stood on her toes, pressing a quick kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Lucas." She was gone before he could respond, leaving Lucas standing in his doorway, touching his cheek like a teenager with his first crush. The next morning, Mia's fever was gone. She woke up demanding pancakes and asking when Victoria was coming back, and Lucas realized his daughter had apparently adopted his almost whatever this was as part of their lives. "She'll probably stop by the house while I'm working," Lucas said, mixing pancake batter. "Can I come see?" "You have school, kiddo." "After school?" Lucas hesitated. Bringing Mia to a work site wasn't ideal, but the project was far enough along that the dangerous parts were finished, and the thought of Mia sitting in Victoria's kitchen doing homework while Lucas worked felt right in a way he couldn't fully explain. "Maybe Friday," he said, "if you're all better by then." Mia cheered, satisfied with the compromise. Lucas dropped her at school, ignoring Rachel's knowing looks when she asked how dinner went, and headed to Victoria's house. He was running early, arriving just before 8, and found Victoria already in the kitchen with coffee brewing. "Morning," she said, handing him a mug before he'd even set down his toolbox. "Morning. You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." Victoria leaned against the counter, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt that was probably expensive but looked comfortable. Her hair was messy, face bare of makeup, and Lucas thought she'd never looked more beautiful. "Kept thinking about last night." "Yeah?" "Yeah. About Mia. About you. About how easy it felt being in your space." Victoria cupped her own mug, her expression thoughtful. "I haven't felt that comfortable anywhere in 2 years, and it was your cramped apartment with cartoon dogs playing on TV and a sick kid coughing on the couch." "We're very glamorous," Lucas said dryly. "You are, actually. Just not in the way most people mean it." Victoria set down her mug. "I need to tell you something." Lucas's stomach dropped. "Okay." "I don't know how to do this. Relationships, dating, whatever this is. My last serious relationship ended 5 years ago, and it was a disaster. We were both married to our careers, barely saw each other, broke up over email because we couldn't find time to do it in person. Victoria's laugh was self-deprecating. So if I'm doing this wrong, if I'm moving too fast or being too intense or… Victoria. Lucas set down his own mug, crossing to where she stood. You're not doing it wrong. How do you know? Because I'm figuring it out too, and so far everything you've done feels right. He took her hand, the gesture becoming familiar now. I like that you showed up at Murphy's. I like that you brought dinner. I like that you made Mia laugh even though she felt terrible. I like all of it. Even the part where I keep making jokes about seeing me naked. Especially that part. It means you're not pretending yesterday didn't happen. You're just dealing with it, with all of this. Victoria squeezed his hand. What if I mess this up? What if I get scared and run away like I've run away from everything else? Then I'll be disappointed. Probably sad. Mia will ask where you went and I'll have to figure out how to explain it. Lucas shrugged. But that's the risk, right? That's what makes it mean something. You're very wise for a guy who fixes toilets. I contain multitudes. Victoria laughed, and the tension broke. She pulled Lucas into a hug, her head against his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her automatically. They stood like that for a long moment, the coffee getting cold on the counter, the morning light streaming through windows that overlooked a yard too big for one person. I have a proposition, Victoria said, her voice muffled against his shirt. I'm listening. Have dinner with me. Here. Tomorrow night. Not takeout, not you working late and me offering food. An actual dinner. I'll cook. Lucas pulled back enough to see her face. You cook? I can follow a recipe, probably. It might be terrible, but the effort will be there. What about Mia? Bring her. Or don't. Whatever works. I just want to do this properly. Candlelight, actual plates, the whole thing. Lucas thought about it. About sitting across from Victoria at a table set for 2, or maybe 3 if Mia came. About what that would mean, the line they'd be crossing from whatever this was into something with a name. Okay, he said. Tomorrow. Just us. Rachel can watch Mia. Victoria's smile was brilliant. Yeah? Yeah. Then it's a date. An actual official date. Our second one, technically, if we're counting Murphy's. We're definitely counting Murphy's. Victoria stepped back and Lucas immediately missed the warmth of her. Now go fix my pipes so you're done in time to shower and show up here looking presentable. I always look presentable. You look like a disaster 90% of the time. A cute disaster, but still. Lucas grabbed his toolbox, shaking his head. I'm going to work now. You're terrible for my ego. Someone has to keep you humble. He headed down to the basement, Victoria's laughter following him, and spent the next 8 hours working faster than he had in weeks. The project was close to done now, maybe 3 more days of actual work, then final inspections and cleanup. 3 more days of showing up at Victoria's house with a professional excuse. After that, if they wanted to keep seeing each other, it would have to be because they chose to. Not because of broken pipes or leaking faucets or any of the small repairs that had brought them together in the first place. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Lucas finished for the day around 5, his back aching and hands sore but satisfied with the progress. He found Victoria in her study, working on her laptop, and knocked on the doorframe. I'm heading out, he said. Victoria looked up, smiling. How'd it go? Good. Should be done by Friday, actually. Maybe Thursday if everything goes smoothly. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Disappointment, maybe, or just the acknowledgement that this arrangement was temporary. That's fast. That's what happens when you stop dragging your feet. Lucas leaned against the door frame. Still want me here tomorrow? For dinner? Definitely. 7 work? 7's perfect. Lucas drove home already thinking about what to wear, what to bring, how to tell Rachel he needed her to watch Mia without explaining exactly why. His sister would figure it out anyway, she always did, but Lucas wanted to maintain the illusion of privacy for at least a few more hours. At home, he texted Rachel, "Can you watch Mia tomorrow night?" Her response came immediately. "Hot date with the billionaire," Lucas groaned. "How do you even know about that?" "Small town," Mia told Emma. Emma told Emma's mom. Emma's mom told me. "I'm just glad you're finally getting back out there. It's not, we're just..." "You're what? Just friends? Just contractor and client?" Please. Lucas gave up. 7 to 10. I'll drop her off at 6:30. I'll feed her dinner and let her stay up late watching movies. You're welcome. Thanks, Rach. Don't screw this up. She sounds good for you? Lucas didn't respond to that because he wasn't sure how to. Victoria did seem good for him. Made him laugh, made him think, made him want things he'd stopped wanting after the divorce. But wanting and having were different things, and Lucas had learned the hard way that not every story got a happy ending. Still, tomorrow night, dinner. Just the two of them. It was a start. And maybe, Lucas thought as he fell asleep that night, maybe a start was all they needed. Lucas changed his shirt 3 times before settling on the first one. A blue button-down that Mia had once said made him look fancy but not weird, which seemed like the right balance for dinner with a billionaire who'd seen him covered in drywall dust more times than he could count. He dropped Mia off at Rachel's at 6:20, enduring his sister's knowing smirk and Mia's excited questions about whether Victoria would be there when she visited on Friday. Have fun, Rachel said, her tone suggesting she knew exactly how nervous Lucas was. And Lucas? Just be yourself. She already likes you. How do you know? Because she keeps finding reasons to keep you around. That's not about the pipes. Lucas drove to Victoria's house with the windows down, trying to calm the anxiety building in his chest. This was ridiculous. He'd had dinner with Victoria before, had sat in her kitchen, her basement, her study, had held her hand at Murphy's and hugged her in this very house just yesterday. But this felt different, intentional, like they were both acknowledging out loud what had been building between them for weeks. He parked in the driveway, grabbed the bottle of wine he'd spent 20 minutes selecting at the liquor store, and walked to the front door. Before he could knock, it opened. Victoria stood there in a dark green dress that hit just above her knees, her hair down and curled in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. She was wearing makeup, not much, just enough to emphasize her eyes, and Lucas forgot how to form words for a solid 3 seconds. "Hi," she said, smiling at his obvious reaction. "Hi, you look really good." "So do you. Is that a new shirt?" "No, I just never wear it because Mia says it makes me look like I'm trying too hard." Victoria laughed, stepping aside to let him in. "Well, I think you look perfect, and you brought wine." "Yeah, I wasn't sure what you were making, so I asked the guy at the store and he recommended this, but if it's wrong, I can—" "Lucas." Victoria took the bottle from his hands. "It's perfect. Stop being nervous." "I'm not nervous." "Your hands are shaking." Lucas looked down. She was right. "Okay, maybe a little nervous." "Good. I've been nervous all day. Nice to know I'm not alone." Victoria led him to the kitchen, where Lucas immediately noticed the table set for 2. Candles, actual cloth napkins, wine glasses that looked like they cost more than his truck payment. "I might have gone a little overboard." "It looks great. Smells great too. What are you making?" "Chicken marsala, or at least my interpretation of it. I followed a recipe, but I might have improvised in places where I didn't have the right ingredients." Victoria checked something in the oven. It's either going to be delicious or completely inedible. No middle ground. "I'm sure it'll be good." "You're very optimistic for someone who's never seen me cook." Lucas poured the wine while Victoria finished plating the food, moving around the kitchen with an efficiency that suggested she'd been practicing. When she finally brought everything to the table, it looked legitimately restaurant quality. "Okay, I'm impressed," Lucas said, sitting down across from her. "Don't be. Not until you taste it." Victoria raised her glass. "To working plumbing and the disasters that bring people together." Lucas clinked his glass against hers. "That's a weird toast." "It's been a weird few weeks." They ate, and the food was actually good. Better than good. Victoria had undersold her abilities, which seemed to be a pattern with her, downplaying her competence until it couldn't be ignored. "So," Victoria said after a few minutes of comfortable silence, "tell me something I don't know about you." "Like what?" "Anything. Your favorite movie, your biggest fear, what you wanted to be when you grew up before life got in the way." Lucas thought about it, twirling his wine glass. "I wanted to be an architect. But you already know that. My favorite movie is probably The Shawshank Redemption, which is basic, but I don't care. And my biggest fear is screwing up Mia, raising her wrong or not being enough, or her growing up and realizing I had no idea what I was doing the whole time." Victoria's expression softened. You're not screwing her up. She's happy, healthy, and clearly adores you. That's more than a lot of kids get. Yeah, but what if it's not enough? What if she needs things I can't give her? Like what? I don't know. Stability, a bigger house, a college fund that's more than $300, and a prayer. Lucas set down his fork. Her mom lives in a nice place now, has a new husband with money. Every time Mia comes back from visiting, she talks about their pool, their guest room, the vacations they're planning, and I'm over here burning toast and hoping my truck doesn't die before I can afford a new one. Does Mia complain about those things? No. Does she ask to live with her mom? Never. Then maybe she doesn't need the pool or the guest room. Maybe she just needs you. Victoria reached across the table, her hand finding his. You're a good father, Lucas. Stop doubting that. Lucas turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. Your turn. Tell me something I don't know. Victoria was quiet for a moment, considering. I haven't played piano in 2 years. Not once since I moved here. I used to play every day, sometimes for hours. It was the only thing that made sense when everything else was chaos. But when I left that life, I left everything that reminded me of it, including music. Do you miss it? More than I thought I would. Sometimes I'll hear something on the radio and my fingers will start moving like they're remembering, and I'll realize how much I gave up when I walked away. Why don't you start again? Because I'm afraid it won't feel the same, that I've been gone too long, and it'll just remind me of everything I lost instead of everything I loved about it. Victoria pulled her hand back, using it to take a drink of wine. Stupid, right? Not stupid. Scared. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah. Stupid is doing something without thinking about the consequences. Scared is thinking too much about them. Lucas smiled. I'm an expert on both. They finished dinner talking about smaller things. Mia's upcoming soccer tournament, the book Victoria was reading, whether the Italian place in town was better than the Thai restaurant. Easy conversation that felt like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. After dinner, Victoria brought out dessert, tiramisu she'd bought from the bakery because, as she put it, I know my limits and baking is definitely past them. They moved to the living room, a space Lucas had only glimpsed in passing during his work. It was less formal than he'd expected, with comfortable furniture and bookshelves lining one wall. You have a lot of books, Lucas observed, scanning the titles. I read when I don't want to think about real life, which lately has been most of the time. Victoria curled up on the couch, tucking her feet under her. What about you? You a reader? Not really. I fall asleep after 2 pages. Mia gets that from me. She'd rather be outside kicking a ball than sitting still with a book. Nothing wrong with that. Victoria patted the cushion next to her. Come sit. You're making me nervous standing there. Lucas sat, hyper-aware of how close they were. Close enough to feel the warmth of her. Close enough to notice the way her dress had ridden up slightly, showing more of her legs than was probably intended. Can I tell you something? Victoria asked, her voice quieter now. Always. I've had 3 serious relationships in my life. The first one ended because he couldn't handle that I made more money than him. The second one ended because I chose work over him one too many times. The third one was the email breakup I mentioned. We just stopped being important to each other and didn't notice until it was too late. She turned to face him more fully. I'm not good at this, at making room for someone else, at compromising or being vulnerable or any of the things relationships apparently need. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you. More than I've liked anyone in a long time, and I don't want to mess this up by pretending I'm better at it than I am. Victoria's eyes searched his face. I want to try. With you. But I need you to know what you're getting into. Lucas reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You know what I think? What? I think you're overthinking this. We're not building a company or planning a wedding or making promises we can't keep. We're just 2 people who like each other, trying to figure out if this thing between us is worth exploring. He let his hand rest against her cheek. And I already know it is. For me, at least. For me too, Victoria whispered. They stayed like that for a moment, the space between them charged with possibility. Then Victoria closed the distance, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was tentative at first, testing. Lucas responded carefully, his hand moving to the back of her neck, and the kiss deepened into something that felt both inevitable and brand new. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. That was, yeah, Lucas agreed, slightly breathless. We should probably talk about what this means. About what we're doing. Or, Lucas suggested, we could just keep doing it and figure out the talking part later. Victoria laughed, and it was the most genuine sound he'd heard from her. I like that plan better. They kissed again, and this time there was less hesitation. Victoria's fingers found the buttons of his shirt, and Lucas's hands traced the curve of her waist, and for a while, they let themselves exist in the moment without analyzing it to death. Eventually, they ended up tangled together on the couch, Victoria's head on Lucas's chest, his arm around her shoulders. The candles had burned down to stubs, and the wine bottle was empty, and Lucas couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this content. I should probably go, he said, not moving. Probably, Victoria agreed, also not moving. Mia's at Rachel's until 10. What time is it now? Lucas checked his phone. 9:15. So you have 45 minutes. Guess so. They stayed there for another 30 minutes before Lucas finally forced himself to sit up. Victoria protested, but she helped him find his jacket and walked him to the door. Thank you for tonight, Lucas said. For dinner, for the conversation, for kissing you senseless on my couch? That too. Victoria smiled, standing on her toes to kiss him one more time. Come back tomorrow, finish the work, and then maybe we can figure out what comes after the work is done. I'd like that. Lucas drove to Rachel's house with his head still spinning, his lips still tingling, his entire body feeling like it was running on adrenaline and possibility. He picked up Mia, who was half asleep and covered in popcorn crumbs, and carried her to the truck. How was your date? Rachel asked at the door, her expression knowing. Good. Really good. Good enough to do again? Yeah, definitely. Rachel hugged him, quick and fierce. I'm happy for you. You deserve this. At home, Lucas got Mia into bed, brushed his teeth, and lay awake staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Thank you for tonight. I haven't felt this happy in years. Sleep well. Lucas smiled, typing back. Same. See you tomorrow. He fell asleep thinking about Victoria's smile, her laugh, the way she'd looked at him like he was something worth keeping. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lucas dropped Mia at school, fielded more questions about Victoria that he deflected with practiced ease, and headed to the house on Ridgeline Drive for what would probably be the last day of actual work. The final connections took most of the morning. Lucas worked methodically, testing each joint, checking pressure, making sure everything was exactly right. By noon, the plumbing system was complete, fully functional, up to code, guaranteed to last decades. Victoria found him in the basement, tightening the last valve. How's it look? Done. You've got working plumbing from the main line all the way through. No more leaks, no more corrosion, no more disasters. Lucas stood, wiping his hands. Well, no disasters related to pipes anyway. That's it? We're done? With this part, yeah, I'll need to come back Monday to do the final inspection with the county, patch some drywall, touch up paint. But the hard work is finished. Victoria was quiet, processing this. So you don't have a reason to be here every day anymore? Not a professional one? No. And if I asked you to come back anyway? Not as my contractor, but as... She hesitated, searching for the word. As your whatever we are? Lucas supplied. Yeah, that. Lucas crossed the space between them, pulling her into his arms. Then I'd say you don't have to ask. I want to be here, with you. Not because of the work, but because I can't really imagine not being here anymore. Victoria buried her face in his chest. I was so worried you'd finish the job and realize you didn't actually need me. That this was just convenient because you were here anyway. Victoria, I've been in love with houses my whole life. I know the difference between a project I'm working on and a person I'm falling for. Lucas pulled back enough to see her face. And I'm definitely falling for you. Her eyes went wide. Lucas, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know, needed you to understand that this isn't about proximity or convenience or anything except the fact that you make me want to take risks I swore I'd never take again. Victoria kissed him, hard and desperate, like she was trying to communicate everything she couldn't say out loud. When they broke apart, her eyes were wet. I don't know how to do this, she said. How to let someone in. how to trust that they won't leave when things get complicated. So we figure it out together. Make mistakes, fix them, keep trying. Lucas wiped a tear from her cheek. That's all anyone can do. What if I mess this up? What if I get scared and push you away? Then I'll push back, remind you why you let me in the first place, probably annoy you until you either kick me out permanently or admit you're stuck with me. Victoria laughed through her tears. You're very persistent. I'm a contractor. Persistence is kind of my thing. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, Lucas finishing the minor cleanup work while Victoria sat nearby, pretending to work on her laptop, but mostly just watching him. It felt domestic in a way that should have been uncomfortable but wasn't. Natural, like this was how things were supposed to be. Around 4, Lucas's phone rang. Karen. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. What's up? He said, stepping into the hallway. I need to talk to you about Mia. Karen's voice had that edge it got when she wanted something. David and I are planning a trip to Europe this summer, 3 weeks. We'd like to take Mia with us. Lucas felt his stomach drop. 3 weeks? It's educational. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. Things she should see while she's young. She's 7, Karen. She'd rather play soccer than tour museums. Well, maybe she needs more culture in her life. More exposure to things beyond that small town you've trapped her in. Lucas bit back the angry response threatening to spill out. I'll think about it. Lucas, we're booking flights next week. I need an answer. Then you'll have to wait for one. I'm not making this decision while I'm standing in someone's hallway. He hung up before she could argue, then immediately felt guilty. That wasn't how co-parenting was supposed to work. But the thought of Mia gone for 3 weeks, of summer without soccer practices and ice cream trips and their quiet evenings together, made Lucas's chest tight with a panic he couldn't quite name. He returned to find Victoria watching him with concern. Everything okay? My ex wants to take Mia to Europe for 3 weeks this summer. And you don't want her to go. I don't want to be the dad who says no to an amazing opportunity because I'm selfish. But 3 weeks without her? Lucas ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how to do that. Victoria stood, crossing to him. What does Mia want? I don't know. Karen just asked. I haven't talked to Mia about it yet. Then start there. Ask her. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. She'll tell you what she actually wants, not what everyone else thinks she should want. Lucas nodded, knowing Victoria was right, but dreading the conversation anyway. When did you get so wise about parenting? I'm not. I'm just good at asking the obvious questions everyone else is too stressed to see. That evening, Lucas picked up Mia from Rachel's and took her for ice cream, their traditional setup for important conversations. They sat at the rickety picnic table outside the shop, Mia working on a chocolate cone that was melting faster than she could eat it. So, Lucas said casually, your mom called today. Is she mad about something? No. She wants to take you on a trip this summer. Europe. 3 weeks. Mia's eyes lit up. Really? Like with airplanes and everything? Yeah, Paris, Rome, places like that. That sounds cool. Mia took another lick of ice cream. Would you come? No, kiddo, just you and your mom and David. Mia's excitement dimmed. Oh. You don't have to go if you don't want to, but if you do, that's okay too. I'll miss you like crazy, but I want you to have good experiences. Mia was quiet for a minute, focusing very hard on her cone. What if I go for part of it? Like 1 week instead of 3? Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. You want to negotiate with your mother? She does it all the time with her work people. I hear her on the phone. She always asks for more than she wants so they can meet in the middle. Lucas laughed despite himself. That's actually pretty smart. So can I tell her 1 week or maybe 2 if she really wants 2? I'll talk to her, see what we can work out. Lucas reached across the table, ruffling Mia's hair. When did you get so good at this stuff? I've been watching you. You're always finding the middle on things. They finished their ice cream talking about school and soccer and whether they should get a dog, a conversation they'd been having on and off for months. By the time they got home, Lucas felt lighter, less panicked about the summer, less worried about being the bad guy. He texted Karen, Mia's interested, but 3 weeks is too long. Let's talk about a compromise. Her response came an hour later. Fine. 2 weeks. That's my final offer. Lucas talked to Mia, who agreed that 2 weeks sounded fair, and just like that, the crisis was resolved. Not perfect, but workable. The kind of solution that left everyone slightly unsatisfied, but functional. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas called Victoria. "Hey," she answered, sounding happy to hear from him. "How'd it go?" "Good. We compromised. 2 weeks instead of 3. See? Asking the kid works." "You were right, as usual." Lucas settled into his couch, phone pressed to his ear. "What are you doing?" "Reading. Missing you. Wondering if it's too soon to ask you to come over even though you just left." "Probably, but ask anyway." "Come over," Lucas laughed. "I can't. Mia's asleep and Rachel's already watched her twice this week." "Then I'll come there." "Victoria, it's almost 9 and I live in a crappy apartment that you've already seen. There's no mystery left." "I don't care about mystery. I care about seeing you. Victoria paused. "Is that weird? Am I being too much?" "No, it's not weird. It's actually really nice." Lucas thought about it, weighing responsibility against want. "Give me 20 minutes. I'll make sure Mia's really out, text Rachel to be on standby in case of emergency, and then you can come over. But I'm warning you, I'm in sweatpants and the apartment's a mess." "I'll be there in 21 minutes. She showed up in 19 wearing jeans and a sweater and looking more relaxed than Lucas had ever seen her. They settled on the couch, some movie playing on mute in the background, and talked about nothing and everything until Victoria started yawning. "You should go home," Lucas said reluctantly. "Get some sleep." "Or I could stay here." Victoria said it casually, but Lucas could hear the question underneath. "Mia's down the hall." "I know, I'm not suggesting anything scandalous, just sleeping next to you, if that's okay." Lucas thought about all the reasons to say no, about boundaries and appropriate pacing and what Mia would think if she woke up and found Victoria there. But he also thought about how good it felt, having Victoria in his space, how right it seemed. "Okay," he said, "but I'm warning you, my bed is terrible and I probably snore. I'll risk it." They fell asleep tangled together in Lucas's too small bed, and when Mia knocked on the door at 6:30 asking about breakfast, Victoria was already awake and dressed, sitting at the kitchen table like she'd been there all along. Mia didn't question it, just climbed into Victoria's lap and started talking about her upcoming soccer game, and Lucas stood in the hallway watching them, his heart doing that complicated thing again. This was happening, really happening, and for the first time in years, Lucas wasn't afraid of it. He was ready. The morning routine shifted into something Lucas hadn't expected. Victoria made pancakes while Mia peppered her with questions about whether she'd ever been to Disneyland and if she knew how to juggle. Lucas stood at the counter drinking coffee, watching this version of his life unfold like he'd stepped into someone else's story. "Dad, Victoria says she'll come to my game on Saturday," Mia announced through a mouthful of pancake. Lucas glanced at Victoria, who shrugged. "If that's okay with you." "Yeah, of course. Just warning you, 7-year-old soccer is mostly chaos with occasional moments of actual sports." "Sounds perfect." Victoria flipped another pancake. "I've never been to a kid's soccer game. Should I bring something? Do people bring things?" "Orange slices if you're feeling ambitious. Low expectations if you're being realistic." Mia giggled, syrup dripping down her chin. "Emma's mom brings fancy cheese. Nobody eats it." "Then I'll skip the fancy cheese," Victoria said seriously, like this was important strategic information. Lucas drove Mia to school an hour later, Victoria following in her own car because she'd parked on the street overnight. At drop-off, Mia turned to him with an expression too knowing for a 7-year-old. "I like her, Dad. She's nice, and she makes you smile different." "Different how?" "Like you mean it more." Mia grabbed her backpack. "You should keep her." She was gone before Lucas could respond, disappearing into the stream of kids heading into the building. He sat there for a moment, processing his daughter's casual blessing of this relationship, then drove to Victoria's house to finish the last of the punch list items. The work was truly done now. Just cosmetic fixes, paint touch-ups, making sure everything looked as good as it functioned. Victoria worked in her study while Lucas moved through the house, and every so often she'd appear with coffee or questions or just to stand nearby while he worked. "What are you going to do when this is really finished?" Victoria asked that afternoon, watching him patch a section of drywall. "When there's nothing left to fix?" "I have other clients, other jobs lined up." "That's not what I meant." Lucas set down his putty knife, turning to face her. I know what you meant. So? So I'll probably show up here anyway. Make excuses about checking the water pressure or inspecting my work. Hang around until you either tell me to leave or admit you want me here. Victoria smiled. What if I admit it now? Then I'll finish this patch job and we can stop pretending this is about plumbing. I haven't been pretending for weeks. Neither have I. They held each other's gaze, and Lucas felt it again. That pull, that certainty that this was going somewhere neither of them had planned but both of them wanted. His phone rang. Rachel. He answered, still looking at Victoria. Hey, what's up? Karen's here, at my house, says she needs to talk to you about the Europe trip. She looks... Rachel paused, choosing words carefully. Intense. Lucas sighed. Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, explaining the situation to Victoria, who immediately offered to come with him. Lucas almost said no. This was his mess to handle, but the idea of facing Karen with backup sounded better than doing it alone. They arrived at Rachel's house to find Karen's Mercedes parked in the driveway, sleek and expensive, and everything Lucas's truck wasn't. Karen was on the porch, looking polished and impatient in designer jeans and sunglasses that probably cost more than Lucas's rent. She pulled off the sunglasses when Lucas approached, her eyes immediately going to Victoria. Who's this? Victoria Kane, friend of Lucas's. Victoria extended her hand with perfect courtesy. Karen shook it, her expression calculating. The billionaire recluse. I've heard about you. And you're Karen. I've heard about you too. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but Lucas caught the steel underneath. Rachel appeared in the doorway, clearly enjoying this more than she should. Anyone want coffee? I just made a fresh pot. No, thank you. Karen turned her attention back to Lucas. Can we talk? Privately? Lucas glanced at Victoria, who nodded and followed Rachel inside. When they were alone, Karen crossed her arms. 2 weeks isn't enough, Lucas. David's already planned the whole itinerary. We need 3 weeks to do it properly. And I already talked to Mia. She agreed to 2 weeks. That's the compromise. She's 7. She doesn't understand what she's agreeing to. She understands that 3 weeks away from home is a long time, and she understands that she wants to go, but not for that long. Lucas kept his voice level, refusing to be drawn into an argument. 2 weeks, Karen. Take it or cancel the trip. Karen's jaw tightened. You're being unreasonable. I'm being a parent. There's a difference. Right. The parent who lives in a cramped apartment and drives a truck that's one breakdown away from the junkyard. The parent who couldn't even afford to send her on a trip like this himself. There it was, the real issue. Not the trip length, but the fact that Karen could offer things Lucas couldn't. Lucas felt the familiar sting of inadequacy, the voice in his head that said, maybe she was right. Maybe Mia deserved better than what he could provide. Then he remembered Victoria's words. You're a good father. Stop doubting that. You're right, Lucas said calmly. I can't afford Europe. Can't give Mia a pool or a guest room or fancy vacations. But I give her stability. I give her a father who shows up, who knows her favorite breakfast and her friends' names and how to make her laugh when she's sad. That might not be worth as much as your money, but it's worth something. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. For a second, she looked almost guilty. I'm not trying to say you're a bad father. Yes, you are. You've been saying it in different ways since we split up. But here's the thing, Karen. I'm done letting you make me feel like I'm not enough. Mia knows I love her. She knows I'd do anything for her. And she also knows that 2 weeks is the compromise we agreed on. Fine. Karen's voice was clipped. 2 weeks. But I'm booking the flights tonight, and if you change your mind last minute, I won't. And neither will Mia. Karen left without saying goodbye, her Mercedes purring out of the driveway like an expensive cat. Lucas stood there for a moment, his hands shaking slightly from adrenaline, then headed inside to find Victoria and Rachel in the kitchen. That sounded fun, Rachel said dryly. She's something else. Lucas accepted the coffee Victoria handed him. Thanks for coming. I know that was probably awkward. Not awkward, enlightening. Victoria leaned against the counter. She really doesn't see what she's missing, does she? Being part of Mia's daily life, the small moments. She sees what she wants to see, a kid who needs things she thinks only money can provide. And you see? A kid who just wants her dad to be present, to show up, to care. Lucas took a drink of coffee. That's what I try to give her, even when it feels like it's not enough. Victoria moved closer, her hand finding his. It's enough. More than enough. They left Rachel's house an hour later, after Lucas assured his sister multiple times that, yes, he was fine, and no, he didn't need to vent about Karen anymore. In the truck, Victoria was quiet, staring out the window at the passing scenery. "You okay?" Lucas asked. "I'm thinking about what you said, about showing up, being present." Victoria turned to look at him. "I've spent 2 years hiding from everything that mattered, convinced myself I was protecting myself, but really, I was just absent from my own life. You're here now. Because you gave me a reason to be, because you and Mia made me want to try again." Victoria's voice went soft. "I don't want to hide anymore, Lucas. I want to be part of this. Your life, Mia's life. If you'll let me." Lucas pulled over, parking on the side of the road because this conversation deserved his full attention. "Victoria, I'm not going anywhere. Neither is Mia. We're here, we're real, and we're not going to disappear just because things get complicated. Promise?" "Promise." Victoria kissed him then, leaning across the center console in a way that was awkward and perfect and entirely them. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "Take me home," she said. "Your home or my home?" "Yours. I want to see where you and Mia actually live when you're not trying to impress anyone." Lucas drove them to the apartment, suddenly hyper-aware of every stain on the carpet and crack in the walls. But Victoria walked in like she belonged there, settling on the couch and looking around with genuine interest. "This is nice," she said. "It feels like you, like Mia, like a place where people actually live instead of just exist. It's small. It's enough." Victoria pulled him down next to her. "Lucas, I need to tell you something, okay? I'm scared. Of this. Of us. Of what happens if I let myself fall for you completely and then it doesn't work out." She took a breath. "But I'm more scared of not trying, of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. So don't walk away. I'm not planning to, but I need you to know that I'm going to mess up sometimes. I'm going to get scared and pull back and probably do all the things I swore I wouldn't do. And when that happens, I need you to call me on it. Push back. Don't let me run." Lucas took her face in his hands. "I won't. And when I mess up, because I will, I need you to do the same. Tell me when I'm being an idiot, when I'm doubting myself too much, when I'm letting my ex-wife's opinions matter more than they should. Deal." They sealed it with a kiss, and this time there was no hesitation, just certainty, just the knowledge that whatever this was, it was worth fighting for. Saturday arrived with perfect weather and Mia's nervous excitement about her soccer game. Victoria showed up at the field with orange slices she'd clearly bought at the fancy grocery store, looking completely out of place among the other parents in their worn jeans and team t-shirts. But she sat with Lucas on the bleachers, cheered when Mia touched the ball, and didn't seem to care that everyone was staring. "Your girlfriend's the billionaire, right?" one of the other dads asked during halftime. "The one who bought the Patterson place." "Yeah," Lucas said, not bothering to correct the girlfriend label. "She seems nice, normal." "She is." After the game, which Mia's team won by 1 goal, they went for ice cream, the 3 of them squished into a booth at the shop. Mia talked nonstop about the game, about how she'd almost scored twice, about how the ref had made a bad call in the second half. Victoria listened like it was the most important thing she'd ever heard. "You're good with her," Lucas said later after they'd dropped Mia at a friend's birthday party. "She makes it easy." Victoria turned to him. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "My house. It has a piano. In the room I've been using for storage. I haven't opened it in 2 years." "You want to start playing again?" "I want to try. And I was thinking, maybe Mia would want to learn, if that's okay with you. I know she's busy with soccer, but if she's interested..." "Victoria." Lucas stopped her rambling. "That would be amazing. Mia would love that." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Lucas reached for her hand. "You're really doing this, aren't you? Making space for us in your life." "I'm trying. Is it working?" "It's working." They spent the rest of the afternoon at Victoria's house, opening up the room with the piano. It was a beautiful instrument, covered in a layer of dust but otherwise perfect. Victoria sat down at the bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. "I don't know if I remember how," she said quietly. Only one way to find out. Victoria pressed down on middle C, the note ringing clear in the empty room. Then another note. Another. Slowly, hesitantly, a melody emerged. Something classical that Lucas didn't recognize, but that sounded beautiful in its simplicity. She played for 10 minutes, her eyes closed, her body swaying slightly with the music. When she finished, there were tears on her cheeks. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot how much I needed this." Lucas crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Then don't forget again. Play every day. Fill this house with music instead of silence. Will you stay while I practice?" "As long as you want me to." They fell into a routine over the next few weeks. Lucas would finish his other jobs, pick up Mia from school, and they'd head to Victoria's house. Mia started piano lessons, her small fingers stumbling over scales while Victoria guided her with infinite patience. Lucas would work on the small repairs that always needed doing in a house that size. And in the evenings, they'd have dinner together, the three of them, like some version of a family Lucas hadn't known he was building. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still had days where she withdrew, where the panic of vulnerability made her quiet and distant. Lucas still struggled with feeling inadequate, with comparing his life to Karen's and coming up short. Mia had moments of 7-year-old jealousy, wanting her dad's attention all to herself. But they worked through it, talked about it, figured it out together. One evening in late spring, after Mia had fallen asleep on Victoria's couch mid-movie, Lucas and Victoria sat on the back porch watching the sun set over the yard. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, "about what comes next. With us? With everything. I can't hide in this house forever. At some point, I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life, what I want to contribute, what matters to me now. And I think I want to start a foundation, something focused on education, on giving kids opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. Music programs, arts education, scholarships." Victoria turned to look at him. "I want to use what I have to make something good, something that lasts." That sounds perfect." "You think so?" "I think you're finally figuring out who you are without the company, without the pressure. And I think whoever that person is, she's pretty incredible." Victoria smiled, leaning into him. "What about you? What do you want?" Lucas thought about his work, his life, the small town he'd chosen as a refuge, about Mia and her endless energy and her simple faith in him, about Victoria and the way she'd crashed into his world through a broken pipe and stayed because she wanted to, not because she had to. "This," he said finally, "I want this. You, me, Mia. I want Saturday soccer games and piano lessons and dinners at this table. I want to watch you build something meaningful and be there to support it. I want to stop questioning whether I'm enough and just trust that what we have is real." "It is real." "I know. I'm starting to believe it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching darkness settle over the valley. Inside, Mia stirred on the couch, and Lucas went to carry her to the guest room Victoria had started keeping ready for nights like this. As he tucked his daughter in, Mia's eyes fluttered open. "Dad?" "Yeah, kiddo. Are we going to live here? With Victoria?" Lucas hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't let himself imagine that possibility. "I don't know, maybe someday. Would you want to?" "Yeah, it's nice here. And Victoria's nice, and the piano is cool." Mia yawned. "Plus the kitchen's bigger. You could make pancakes without burning them." "I don't burn pancakes that often." "You burned them this morning." "Okay, fair point." Lucas kissed her forehead. "Sleep, kiddo. We'll figure out the rest later." Back on the porch, Victoria was still sitting in the same spot, but now she had her phone out typing something. She looked up when Lucas returned. "Sorry, just emailing my lawyer about setting up the foundation. Figured I should start before I lose my nerve." "You're not going to lose your nerve." "How do you know?" "Because you're done running. You told me that yourself." Victoria set down her phone, standing to meet him. "I meant what I said earlier, about wanting this. Us. All of it. Even the cramped apartment and the burnt pancakes. Especially those. They're real. They're honest. They're everything I didn't know I was missing." She wrapped her arms around his waist. "Lucas, I'm falling in love with you. Probably already fell, if I'm being honest. And I'm terrified. But I'm also sure. More sure than I've been about anything in years." Lucas felt his chest tighten with emotion. I love you too. Have for a while now. Was just waiting for the right time to say it. Is this the right time? Seems like it. They kissed under the stars, and it felt like a promise, like the beginning of something neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted desperately. The summer passed in a blur of soccer practices and piano recitals, and long evenings at Victoria's house. Mia went to Europe for 2 weeks with Karen and came back full of stories about Paris and Rome, but eager to get back to her normal life. She started calling Victoria's house our other place, which made Lucas's heart do complicated things. In August, Victoria officially launched her foundation, with Lucas and Mia in the front row of the announcement event. She spoke about second chances and finding purpose, and the importance of giving kids opportunities to discover their own talents. She was nervous, her hands shaking as she gripped the podium, but her voice was steady and clear. Afterward, a reporter asked if the rumors were true, if she was dating a local contractor. Yes, Victoria said without hesitation. I am, and he's the best thing that's happened to me in years. Lucas felt his face heat as every camera swung toward him, but he also felt proud. Proud of Victoria for claiming their relationship publicly. Proud of himself for not caring what anyone thought. That night, after all the celebration and congratulations and attention had faded, they sat in Victoria's kitchen, the same kitchen where this had all started with a burst pipe and an embarrassing encounter. You know what's funny? Victoria said, pouring them both wine. What? If that pipe hadn't burst, if you hadn't panicked and run upstairs, if everything hadn't gone completely wrong that day, we might never have gotten here. So you're saying disaster is good for relationships? I'm saying sometimes the thing that seems like the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of the best part. Lucas raised his glass. To disasters, then. And to the people who help us survive them. Victoria clinked her glass against his. They drank, and Lucas thought about everything that had led them here. The divorce, the move, the lonely years of rebuilding his life, one repair at a time, Victoria's burnout, her escape, her 2 years of hiding from the world. All of it had been necessary, somehow. All of it had been leading to this moment. I have something to ask you, Victoria said, setting down her glass. Okay. Move in with me. You and Mia. I know it's fast. I know there are a million reasons to wait, but this house is too big for one person and too empty without you in it. And Mia asked me last week if you were going to marry me, which I know is way too soon to think about, but it made me realize I want you here, permanently. If you want that too. Lucas stared at her, processing. Moving in together was huge, was the kind of commitment that meant something real, something lasting. It meant combining their lives completely, meant trusting that this wasn't temporary. But when he thought about it, really thought about it, he couldn't find a single reason to say no. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I want that too. Victoria's smile was incandescent. Really? Really. Mia will lose her mind with excitement. Fair warning, she's going to want to redecorate her room approximately 17 times. I can handle that. Victoria moved around the counter, pulling him into a kiss that tasted like wine and promise. When? Give me a month to sort out the lease, pack our stuff, prepare Mia properly. Then we're yours. Not mine. Ours. Ours, Lucas agreed. They spent the rest of the night planning, talking about room assignments and furniture and how to make the transition smooth for Mia. It felt surreal and perfect and terrifying in the best possible way. A month later, Lucas and Mia moved into the house on Ridgeline Drive. Mia claimed the room with the best view, immediately covering it with soccer posters and stuffed animals. Lucas merged his life with Victoria's, his worn furniture mixing with her expensive pieces in a way that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. The first night in their new home, the three of them sat at the kitchen table eating takeout pizza because nobody felt like cooking. Mia chattered about her new room and the piano lessons she wanted to increase to twice a week. Victoria talked about the foundation's first grant recipients, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Lucas just listened, taking it all in, unable to believe this was his life now. Later, after Mia was in bed, Lucas and Victoria stood in the kitchen where everything had started. You know what I'm grateful for? Lucas asked. What? That pipe bursting. That moment of chaos that made me panic and do the stupidest thing possible. Victoria laughed. Running into a room without knocking? Yeah, because if I hadn't, we might have stayed stuck in our roles, contractor and client, polite and professional and completely separate. Instead, we got awkward and embarrassing and real. Exactly. Lucas pulled her close. I wouldn't change any of it. The embarrassment, the complications, the fear. All of it brought us here. To our kitchen, to our life. Victoria kissed him, soft and slow, and Lucas felt it again. That certainty that had been building since the first time he'd sat across from her at Murphy's bar. This was it. This was what he'd been rebuilding toward without knowing it. Not a perfect life, but a real one. One full of music and laughter and small repairs that needed constant attention. One where a billionaire and a handyman and a 7-year-old soccer player somehow became a family. Outside, the town settled into its quiet evening rhythm. Inside, in a house that had been too big and too empty for too long, 3 people who'd all been broken in different ways found something whole. It wasn't the ending Lucas had imagined when he'd first moved to this town, tired and divorced, and certain he'd never risk his heart again. It wasn't what Victoria had expected when she'd bought this house as a hiding place from the world. But it was theirs, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.